Peace and love, family. Welcome to another powerful discussion with your sister, Dr. Ma'at. Before we get tonight's powerful discussion started, I have a few announcements to make. Actually, one announcement to make. Baba Ashwall Kwesi family is coming to Baltimore. That's right. You heard me. Baba Ashwall Kwesi, master teacher, student of Dr. Ben. A lot of people running around here. I walk with Dr. Ben. I'm a student of Dr. Ben. Nah. Baba Ashwall Kwesi, and you heard the last interview. He talked about how he was a student of Dr. Ben and studying under Dr. Ben for years. So we have the master teacher himself coming to Baltimore, family, this Saturday, November the 12th at 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. It says doors open at 6 p.m. We're talking about Eastern Standard Time at the Temple of New African Thought, okay, which is located at 55527 Harford Road, Baltimore County. Baltimore, Maryland. I butchered that whole thing, family. So I want to say it again. The event will be happening at the Temple of New African Thought. We call it the TNAT Holistic Wellness Center, located at 55527 Harford Road, Baltimore, Maryland, 21214. And all night, family, I'll be dropping the link so that you can get your tickets. I'll drop the link in the chat so you can get your tickets. Family, come on out. Baba Ashwall Kwesi, master teacher Baba Ashwall Kwesi, is going to be talking about the African origins of Christianity and the origin of the Christmas holiday. Come on now, family. You already know that a lot of brothers and sisters, we debate all day online about Christianity. Is it a white man's, is it a white man's religion? Where did it come from? Well, on Saturday, he's going to be discussing the African origin of Christianity and the origin of the Christmas holiday. He's going to be talking about that tonight, family. Okay, so he'll be giving us a snippet tonight, but if you come on out to the lecture on Saturday, he's going to be showing you proof. I'm talking about as a whole presentation with proof, with receipts, as the young people would say. Okay, so tonight we're going to talk about it, but on Saturday he's going to come with not only the discussion and the facts, but also with the receipts, family. So come on out this Saturday. I will be dropping a link for you to purchase your ticket in the chat. And so, family, again, if you're in the DMV area, come on out. You don't want to miss this, okay? And so Baba also blessed me with this video because there are a lot of young folks, and I know I got a lot of young folks who watch my platform, and some of you may not be familiar with Baba Ashwall Kwesi, right? You're like, who is that, Dr. Ma'at, right? You're just getting on the scene, and I get it, I understand. And so Baba said, well, look, I have a video on my social media page, which gives people an introduction as to who I am. So I'm going to play this video before I bring on our master teacher, our scholar, Baba Ashwall Kwesi.
Just like in ancient times, even going down to the time of King Tutankhamun, just to give you an idea of time itself, he came here on pilgrimages. This was a place where people made pilgrimage to come back here to honor this great structure that Imhotep built for his Nisu, and that was for Zoser. When Herodotus came here in 450 BC, and at his time, he observed the white limestone. Those of you who are coming from the airport, we talked about the Macatan Mountains. This is
family. Oh my gosh, did you feel that? I mean, is it me? Tell me in the chat if you felt that energy. Oh my goodness. So that's a perfect introduction to who we have coming on tonight. This is his website right here, family. You can go to kemetnew.com. And I'll be dropping this link in the chat as I'm conversing with him. So you'll have access to his website. You'll have access to the ticket link because he will be in Baltimore, family, this Saturday. And so you're looking on the screen, you're looking at his website, kemetnew.com. And so if you are interested in going back to Kemet and to learning and studying under our great master teacher, Baba Ashwall Kwesi, head on over to kemetnew.com and check out. There's a link right here that talks about his field trips, his educational trips or cultural trips. He has, look at this, you can order different products. Look at this, Egypt tours. You come here, you click this, tour payments, you click that. He has Egypt videos here, Egypt photos, and you have different lectures, family, that you can come on over here and purchase. I actually purchased a lot of his lectures myself. And so you saw me kind of flash. That's when I flex. I just flash my DVDs from back in the day or my books from the master teachers that they've signed. That's my flex. Some of y'all flex jewelry. I flex books and lectures. Ashe. And so anyway, family, come on over here to kemetnew.com and connect with our master teacher, Baba Ashwall Kwesi. So without further ado, family, you know I gotta play my intro. I see a lot of you all are in the building. Let's get the likes up, family. Let's get the views up. I see SO in the building. All right. It says peace and love, our powerful queen. Oh, yeah. It's my brother from the Togo. Peace and love to your family. Danielle Scott is in the building. He said, once again, you're bringing me some great news. Ashe. All right, then we have our beautiful queen in the building, a beautiful mind. She says, peace and love, everyone. I see Cynthia Howard. That beautiful queen is in the building. Peace and blessings to you, my queen. I see Maine Armstead. He said, peace to everyone in the chat. Danielle Scott said, Hotep family. Dr. Queen Reese Johnson is in the building. Peace to you, beloved. All right, Maine Armstead. Okay, BJ Riggs. BJ Riggs is in the building. He says, peace and love to everyone. Cliff, I see you, brother, in the building. He said, good evening. Saw you at the rally for reparations, brother. We're going to be talking about that this Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So make sure you tune in, brother. I'm going to drop the link because I want people to come on in and tell me their thoughts about the reparations rally. But it was good seeing you, brother. All right, I see who else is in the building. Who else is in the building? Queen Mother, our Queen Mother, Anna Scribner is in the building. She says, peace and blessings, family. Peace to you, Queen Mother. We got the Queen Mothers in the building. Garrett, I'm sorry, in the spirit and in truth, Ashe. All right, Everett said he's on Facebook, but he's heading on over to YouTube right now because you already know it's popping over YouTube. It's always popping on YouTube. Apar Elorda, I probably butchered it. She says, the Sarah, Ashe. All right. Suboon said, "Have folks, peace and love to your family." Gerald Meeks. We got Baba Amin from the Uhuru Academy family right now. And if you're looking for African-centered education, make sure you head on over to uhuruacademy.com to get your child enrolled in the number one online African-centered institution for Black children. Ashe. Letitia A.M. is in the building. Peace to you, beloved. I know you're celebrating your birthday today. I was just telling Baba about it backstage. Peace to you, beloved. And happy birthday. Y'all drop happy birthday in the chat for Sister Letitia 100. Drop happy birthday in the chat for me. Nate Al, Hotep to your family. I see Monica Devon. That beautiful queen is in the building. Peace and love to you. Aquarius 79. Good evening, sister. So we already know your zodiac sign. That's my zodiac sign, Aquarius. But I'm Aquarius 81. I was born in 81. But peace and love to you, beautiful queen. Good evening to you. And then we have Sokordi Wahab. I say to you, king. And last but not least, Bakari says life, prosperity, health to the master teachers. Ashe. But yeah, show Letitia some love and let's bring on our master teacher, Baba Ashwall Kwesi. I'm up here looking for my intro, family. Here we go.
Let's combat and fight back with Meltrex. The war of the minds, they want control of the masses. And Common Core, they dumb us down in the classes. Without knowledge, we can't gain access. Build with the elders, take notes and write classes. We keep whining on the block, how it's gonna stop? Let's start supporting our own, make their supply drop. We buy stocks, then we buy blocks. Cause we know the truth and we tuned in to Dr. Maya.
A BB to me, a BB Fahodie. Peace to all of my thinkers, truth speakers, and truth seekers. Welcome to another Truth to Power Talk with your sister, Dr. Ma'at. Thank you for joining another powerful discussion. And tonight I have with me another powerful guest, but he is no stranger to the community, to the international and the national community, Baba Ashwall Kwesi, master teacher. Peace and love to you, Baba. How are you doing tonight?
Oh, great. I'm doing fine, Sister Mahat, Dr. Mahat. Asante Sana for that introduction.
No problem.
I still consider myself a student. I marry your spirit, comedic term for love. I see you say you were Aquarius. I'm married wrong. My wife is Aquarius. That's why I like that spirit.
Ashe, Baba. Well, Baba, first and foremost, thank you so much, for taking time out of your schedule to be with myself and, my listeners tonight. We appreciate you. You're all over the world, Baba, and you got so much going on and so much to give. And so I just appreciate you taking time out to be with us tonight. And also, Baba, for you coming to Baltimore, this Saturday. I haven't seen you in some years. I remember when Brother Jabari from Reality Speaks, he brought you to Baltimore a few years back. And that was the first time I had the opportunity of meeting you in person. I don't know if you remember. I walked up to you after your presentation. I was telling you about the Meltrek program, that I created for young people. And so you kind of looked at it and you're like, all right, sister, all right, you doing your thing. But since then, Baba, that program is now being utilized in 30 states and 10 countries. So the program program I showed you years ago is now getting out there, Baba. And so, but I showed it to you first when you came to Baltimore some years ago. And so I appreciate you coming on back, and we're looking forward to receiving you on Saturday and receiving the message that you're going to bring, because I know it's going to be a powerful message.
Santi sisters, again, I want to say many thanks to that young warrior, Brother Jabari. Actually, Jabari has been bringing me to Baltimore, I think, all the way back from the 90s.
Wow.
I'm quite sure. I remember when he was a very, very young man, he started the community, peace be upon his Bobby Wright would call it. That's where you have a community, education, and liberation. So it's been a long time coming back to that area. Mm-hmm.
Wow. Yeah, Bob. Yeah, Brother Jabari has been putting in work. I actually met him about 24 years ago. So this was 1998 when I actually met him. My dad introduced me to him because he owns Brother Jabari owns a barbershop called Conscious Heads Barbershop here in Baltimore. My dad used to get his hair cut over there. And so he introduced me to him. And I remember him bringing in, Anthony T. Browder, and he brought in so many folks,
a lot of people.
Dr. Khalid Muhammad. I was like, wow, Jabari, you met Dr. Khalid Muhammad? He was like, yeah, I used to work with him. I'm like, oh my gosh. And so, he worked with a lot of people, that today that we hold in high regard. He actually worked with these people. And I'm like, wow, Brother Jabari. And so I appreciate all the work that he's putting in. So family, right now, take a moment out to thumb up this video. You know how the algorithm works. The more you engage the video, the more it pops up and feeds, right? So make sure that you take a moment out, thumb up this video. Also, family, share this video. Sharing is caring. Don't you just sit here and log in and get all the information. Make sure you share this information, right? Sharing is caring. Also, family, if you're watching on another platform, make sure you head on over to YouTube and subscribe to my channel. Hit the notification bell so that whenever I go live, you will be notified. Also, family, make sure that you check out the Truth to Power talk playlist that I created on my channel. I've brought on Baba Ashwall Kwesi. He actually came on maybe about a month ago. I've had on Professor James Smalls, Dr. Kaba Kamene. I've had on the great Dr. Patricia Newton, peace be upon her soul. She was here in 2021. Malefe Asante, Dr. Wade Nobles, Dr. Derry, and everybody else. So family, make sure you check out the discussions in the archives. Also, family, join me back here each and every Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for the Read Book Club. This Sunday, we will be discussing Chapter 8 of The Color of Law by Richard Rothstein. So make sure that you tune in. And even if you don't have the book or haven't read the chapter, still tune in because you will definitely learn something from the build. So, Baba, without further ado, let's get into tonight's discussion, the African origins of Christianity and the Christmas holiday. I know initially when we talked, you said, well, I'm going to come on and talk about the African origin of biblical stories. And then that kind of shifted from that to, the African origins of Christianity and then the Christmas holiday, because the Christmas holiday is coming up, and people want to know the origins of this holiday, and so we got some pastors in the building. Peace to the Queen Mother, Anna Scribner. She's in the building. She's a pastor, and she just became assistant pastor about a couple of months ago. So shout out to her. And so I told her that you were coming on, and so she said, "I'm gonna make sure I tune in because I want to know. I want to learn about the African origins of Christianity and also of the Christmas holiday." So, Baba, without further ado, the floor is all yours, Baba.
Oh, Asante Sana, many thanks, Dr. Ma'at. Again, this is a time of the year that presenting this presentation over the years, my wife got that, over the years, presenting this presentation for many, many years now on the African origin of Christianity. And this is appropriate time, as I call it, theme times. And what I mean by theme times is that, here's the time that our people were out there frolicking and helping to pick up the gross national product. And for the most part, a lot of us are caught into white idolatry or worshiping white images. And some of us have no idea that many of these things that we see out here, or even the birth of this image, that the so-called image of this European, as I refer to as the Serapis Jesus, that I'll talk about in a minute. And it's sad to see in my neighborhood. Now I live here in Dallas, Texas, and here in a Black neighborhood. It's the only neighborhood I'm going to live in. Okay. And but the sad thing is to see Black folks here in the neighborhood pulling out little plastic white babies and putting them in their yard, and the plastic white male and female, and then they refer to it as a so-called Holy Family. And in some cases, I've even seen a brother who even had rituals with his child. And I asked him, "Well, what are you doing?" He said, "Well, I'm telling my son that this is the Son of God." And I said, "You mean this little plastic white baby that you just pulled out the closet is the Son of God?" I said, "Brother, your son is the Son of God." Okay. I said, in fact, our ancestors created that whole spiritual idea called Sa-Ra, Son of God. Okay. And he said, "That's heresy. Get out my yard. My son's not the Son of God. Here's the Son of God right here. It's a little plastic white baby." So again, this is white idolatry. He had a little pillow and a blanket for him, okay, in the yard and everything. And it's sad to see these things. In fact, about 5 doors down, the guy just blew up a big white Santa Claus, literally bigger than, he's a 1-story house, and the thing is bigger than his 1-story house. So again, here we are trapped in this culture, and the deification of the European culture is through these images. And unfortunately, these things were stolen, but corrupted and whitewashed, should I say. And we have not been able to see where the spiritual concepts came from our ancestors. In fact, the whole spiritual Black divinity in African spirituality has been corrupted. And just like we are a stolen people, and as I said, we're stolen people, the next question you got to ask them, what else has been stolen? So I have to give respect to my teacher, Dr. Joseph Nyakanen, as I always say, that when I met him years ago, back in 1973 at Long Beach State, and at that time in the Black Power movement. And at that time, I did not know a lot about our African spirituality or Black divinity. And Dr. Ben gave a powerful lecture that day. And he said, and I asked Dr. Ben after the lecture, after giving a powerful lecture on our Black divinity and spirituality, African spirituality. And I said, "Can you prove this?" He said, "I can take you back to Africa and show you." And that started my dream. And I made that trip with him in 1981, not knowing that I'd spent 14 years doing apprenticeship under him, and now 42 years nonstop, returning back to Africa. Going back to the books in stone, and now taking hundreds of brothers and sisters back with my Mary Rod, my Netter Hemp, that's the Kemetic word for divine wife, I Netter Hedge, divine husband. In fact, she researched those two terms. In fact, we met in Kemet. In fact, her family came on the tour. And we actually met in Kemet on Dr. Ben's tour, and Dr. Ben did our marriage ceremony when I asked for a queen.
that was back in 1992. I asked for a queen, and she came in 93. In fact, he did our marriage ceremony in the very temple I asked for her. So again, living in the spirit of my aunt, it all comes together. So we've traveled the world together. Have lectured quite a few places, continental U.S., Europe, and far away as Japan. So again, without her, I would have a lot of rough edges trying to do this. So she's definitely been on the front line with me and to carry this journey out. But as I was saying, back to the temples, again, as Dr. Ben said, I can take you back and show you. So now I equally show hundreds of brothers and sisters many of these spiritual ideas. And when we look at these holidays, and even though we're in these holidays and we have no idea what the spiritual representation and where it came from and how it's been corrupted, whether that be Christmas, whether that be Easter and other various holidays. But in the holiday of Christmas, this particular holiday, it's a corruption from many ideas that our ancestors saw, who were the first astrophysicists. And meaning they took stories that they saw in the cosmos, and they took these stories and they incorporated it into spiritual ideas, meaning that the first idea of a holy child, and also a virgin birth. These stories were told by our ancestors thousands of years ago. In fact, it's documented on the books in stone and how our ancestors saw that. And at this particular time of the year, our ancestors, what did they observe in the cosmos? What did they observe being the first astrophysicists and keeping a spiritual story alive for eternity as they saw it? Well, they saw that in the time of Virgo, this is the time where we see that the sun is slowly going into autumn, and they saw it. This was the birth of the sun from the constellation of Virgo. As it descended down to December the 25th, our ancestors observed that at this time, they saw that there was a star called Seba Siptah. That's the Kemetic word for the star that they refer to as Seba, Siptah, and that the Greeks refer to as Ceres and the Romans refer to as Sothis. By observing that star, they saw that a holy child would be born. Who is this holy child that would be born of a virgin birth from his mother, Aset, who the Greeks refer to as Isis? This would be Haru, who was personified as the sun. When we take brothers and sisters back, we observed and show where our ancestors are in the spirit of the Dua, meaning holding two hands up, giving adoration to this star. They would tell them of this holy birth that would actually take place. When we go to the temple in the world's first holy city called Aptu, we can see this holy birth. We can see this holy birth where Aset forms herself into a kite, into a bird. And here she takes the seed from her husband. I did not talk about her husband, but let me briefly talk about Asar, who was her spiritual husband, who was murdered by the evil brother. This is the spiritual short story in ancient Kemet known as the Zeptepi, or the first time. Was there a Genesis story yet? No, did not exist. Was there a story? Did not exist. Was there a Western version of Christianity? Did not exist. All the religions that we refer to as Western religions did not exist yet. When the Zeptepi, or the first time of creation of the first man and woman who were created, was Asar and Aset, not no Adam and Eve story.
Come on, Baba.
And in that spiritual story, they were created simultaneously. There was no rib taken from Asar to make Aset. That was misogyny in the patriarchs who brought that story.
Hold on, Baba. I didn't hear you again. I didn't hear you again. I think it was some static in my headphones, Baba. So in this particular story, you're telling me that it was no such thing as a woman being taken from the rib, but that the Creator created man and woman simultaneously at the same time. And you connected that story of Adam and Eve to misogyny of the patriarchs.
Well, I call it misogyny because in the story, as they have it from the patriarchal point of view, in the story of they were put in the garden of Eve, of the Garden of Eden, and in that story, they were not to eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Is that right?
Yes, right.
So Eve is the one that seduces Adam. After a snake comes to her, and got Eve to take this fruit or whatever it is. What kind of fruit? And seduces Adam with it. And because of that, that is the reason for the world's sins, because of what Eve did. And then her cycle is to remind her of that sin. So a sick misogynist wrote this.
Come on, Baba. Come on.
And it ended up, in the as we get the story of Eve, okay, who was seduced. And this snake in the Hebrew version is called a heifer, okay, a snake goddess. So I always said and asked many ministers when it says, let us make man in our own image. Well, I've been asking about this us for a long time because that's plural. So
Right.
was there a marital dispute, okay, in the Hebrew concept of heaven, and the goddess was kicked out, okay, and then she was called the heifer, and now the heifer in the Hebrew term is called a snake goddess. Now we know sisters, when a sister invited her girlfriend over to the house, and all of a sudden that girlfriend who was turned into a heifer and took her man. So what's the first thing you call her? A heifer. That heifer took my man. Well, that's the snake goddess. Okay. So again, that's why I call it misogyny, okay? Because in ancient Kemet, we did not have that kind of story. They were created simultaneously. After all, when we look at that navel, the reason why we got navels is because of the umbilical cord. And when they even made the European image of the Adam and Eve story, they even gave them navels, all right? They didn't have even in their art, they don't have a rib showing a rib taken from Adam. So that's the story in ancient Kemet where they were created simultaneously. But in that story, player hating was going on back then too, because here Asar has an evil brother named Set, who was jealous of him because Asar was a good man. And he got 72 conspirators to murder him and cut him up into 14 pieces in many versions of the stories. I go through it real quick. But even the whole idea of the Cain and Abel story, this is where that story was taken from. Keep in mind that these early Bibles, okay, that we have, in fact, the first Bibles were written in Alexandria, Egypt, like the Septuagint version. In fact, Matthew's, okay, story of the Gospels was written right there in Alexandria, Egypt. Why in Alexandria, Egypt? Because that's where the Greeks came in and named that city after Alexander, who came in 332 BCE and got Aristotle to plunder these protetas, okay, tombs of eternity, up and down the Nile, as well as the Netterhet, or the divine house, dedicated to the spiritual netters, okay, or divine entities that I'll talk about in a second. So again, by having all these thousands of papyruses, these Greeks were there for 300 years and studied ancient African spirituality and the making of these stories that I briefly told about the Adam and Eve story and so forth. But even in the story that I was talking about a minute ago, about the virgin birth story, that story, our ancestors observed what they saw in the cosmos, what they saw that is happening right now. And I go out in my backyard in December and observe this event. What am I observing? And what did they observe thousands of years ago? What they observed is that as the sun continued to go down, they saw that the sun at December the 25th, it was the birth of the sun. How they could tell? Because that star, Sipta, rose. And that star told them that this spiritual birth would take place. And they personified these various representations that we have in human form, meaning that Haru represented the sun. Sipta also represented Aset, okay, the spiritual mother, who gave forth this virgin birth, because keep in mind that her husband was murdered, but she takes the seed from him at the temple that I take groups to, which is the Ptah shrine. And there we can see this holy birth, where she forms herself into this figure of a bird and takes the seed. And here we have a holy birth and immaculate conception. At the temple of Aset, now called the Temple of Isis today, I show our brothers and sisters there where the star is there, Sipta. And also we see Aset, and her husband Asar is there, and she's holding in her hand the Neter Ankh, or divine life. And why is she holding the Neter Ankh, or divine life? Because that again represents life. Where's life going to come from? The womb, which is the symbol of the Ankh, the uterus. So she's holding that, representing that divine birth and that immaculate conception story. Now, when we look at the European Western version of what I said about the cosmos, why is it that we always see this European representation of Mary with the sun behind her head? Is that the sun in the constellation of Virgo? Why do we see the European Jesus represented always with the sun behind his head?
Come on, Baba.
What we see here, that they got people caught up into white idolatry. And through the dogma of the religion, people were taught to believe in these things. And believing in these things, the images and representation, we didn't see the cosmos in it. We didn't see that this was the star system Subosipta that the Greeks call Ceres. We didn't see that sun represented Haru. We didn't see that represented a set. And a set is shown, as I show our groups, on the temple, where she's holding her child, Haru, in her lap, lactating her holy child. And Justinian in the 4th century, Theodosius in the 4th century, and Justinian in the 6th century AD, why did they come in and try to chisel it out from the temple? They were shutting these temples down. These temples were under the sand for over 1,000 years. They were not dug out to tell the truth. They were dug out to make tourist dollars. And to this day, people tiptoe through the tulips when they come through Kemet. They don't talk about these stories in many cases. But as Dr. Ben told me, that we come through here to the books in stone and reveal the spiritual truth that our ancestors were telling of this ancient story that's been corrupted and now got our people into white idolatry and worshiping these images, though they were real, when they were a corruption of ancient African spirituality. It was told thousands of years ago. In fact, let's go to this whole spiritual story of a virgin birth was told throughout the Nile Valley. Okay. Even though we see the Sar and a Set, they were the first spiritual stories in their holy child Haru, born of Immaculate Conception, holy birth. But throughout the dynastic period of ancient Kemet, every Nisu or king, okay, who took the throne equally had to symbolically be born of a virgin birth. Let's go to the temple called Ipit Rasut, or now called Luxor Temple. And all the way in the back, here we can see where the Romans built this basilica, as I revealed to brothers and sisters. And on there, the Byzantine Romans, okay, got their images up there where they plastered over Amenhotep III, okay, of the 18th dynasty. Now, why did they plaster over it? And this is still there today. Now everything I'm talking about, I come with visual documentation, all right, because images shape our reality, but the reality I'm going to show is what our ancestors put on these books in stone. Why did they cover up Amenhotep III? All right. Well, now the plaster is falling off, and you can see Amenhotep III underneath. Here's also a story of a virgin birth. Here he's born from a virgin birth from his mother Matanmuya. And all the way in the back of the temple, the story is still there telling of his holy birth. Here we see that Tahuti is the spiritual netter that would, in the Western term, would be called angels today. This is the spiritual divinity of ancient Kemet. Tahuti is the one that gave the call. Also to a Set that I didn't mention a minute ago, that she would have a holy birth and the Immaculate Conception. Okay, this is Tahuti. So Tahuti is the one that gave the call, the call that the Nisu would have, or also the queen would have a virgin birth. In this case, it was Matanmuya. These are the books in stone. These are the stories that were told for thousands of years before Western civilization or Western religion was even existence, and it's still there. Now, let's go back to Tahuti. Tahuti comes to a Set and tells her of this holy birth. In fact, Tahuti is referred to as the caller. Now, let's go to the story of the Christian story. Here we see Gabriel, the angel of the Lord. Gabriel, the angel of the Lord, comes in the back room, and Mary's shocked. Who are you? I'm Gabriel, the angel of the Lord, to let you know you're going to have a holy child. Now, does that sound like the story that's told on the Mimizi house at the temple of Aset, where Tahuti is coming to Aset and saying that she's going to have a holy birth that existed thousands of years before this story of Gabriel, the angel of the Lord, coming to Mary and saying she's going to have a holy birth?
Teach, Baba.
Let's go into the Mimizi house carved in stone. And there you see the three spiritual Netarus coming to Aset with a holy child she's holding in her lap. Here she had to hide, by the way, in the papyrus swamps. Why did she have to hide in the papyrus swamps? Because the evil brother, okay, of Asar, who was Set, she feared that he was going to kill her son. So she had to hide in the papyrus swamps. Does that sound like the story of Jesus and Herod, where Jesus had to hide from Herod? Also, when we see the story that she had to hide in the papyrus swamps, when I take our group back there, I have pictorial images from the Bible. And I take a picture that I show from a pictorial image of the Bible with Moses and the bulrushes. And I put that picture right up to the relief, and brothers and sisters just gasp to see where that was literally copied from a set in the papyrus swamps, and now they changed it to Moses and the bulrushes. One account after the other, how we can see how these stories came about. Now, let's look at the whole cosmic connection that our ancestors, as I was saying earlier, that had with that. Okay, so when we look at what also indication that told them that Haru was going to be born of this virgin birth. We know about the star Septa that rose, but there's also the indication there were 3 stars in Orion's belt. The constellation of Orion, by the way, represented Asar. In the belt of Asar, there are 3 stars. In the Kemetic terms, it's called Al-Nalam, Al-Natekim, and Teka. Precisely at December the 25th, those 3 stars point directly to that star. I have European images and their pictorial images and representation that they have in Western version of Christianity of the Magi that they refer to as the 3 wise men. The European representation of these images of these 3 wise men who were supposed to come, and they are pointing directly to that star. These are nothing but European images that represent the cosmos. They just put themselves over the cosmos. So those 3 stars in Orion belt are the 3 wise men. The sun at December the 25th, that is the sun that's born at that time that our ancestors personified as Haru, and the star system Septa also represented Aset. So here you see in the cosmos, Orion representing Asar, and also Septa representing Aset. Here's the spiritual mother and father, the spiritual holy family of Kemet, and the spiritual child is Haru. Here's a cosmic event that Europeans plagiarized in the making of the Western version of this Jesus that we see today. And because of white idolatry and the dogma, people have gotten caught in that these images and representations are real, when in fact it was literally stolen, corrupted from the temples. And that's why when Theodosius and Justinian shut these temples down in the 4th and 6th century AD, and they were under the sand for over 1,000 years, they were not dug out to tell the truth. They were only, as I said before, dug out to make towards dollars. But that's what our mission is, to go over to reveal from the books in stone. You're walking in the book. You're in the stories. Nature, that the Greeks refer to as hieroglyphics. Spiritual ideas that we see, terms that we use that are used today. Terms like what? Sarah. What is Sarah? The Son of God. The idea when Europeans used that concept of the Son of God to represent the Serapis Jesus. I refer to the Serapis Jesus because the idea of this European version of this Jesus was brought about at the Conference of Nicene in 325 AD.
Hold on, Baba. We met our quota. It's over 100,000 people watching, Baba. So I gotta drop a bomb. I gotta drop a bomb.
Okay, 100,000 people.
For the 100,000 people who are in the building, we met it, Baba. We hit it. Okay. So I wanted to let EY Pelly know it says phenomenal information. I don't see the slides. Family, you got to come to Baltimore.
Well, that's
if you want to see the
visual
slides.
Documentation.
Yeah.
With the visual documentation to validate where these are for many, many years of documenting this on the books in stone.
Absolutely. So you got to come to Baltimore this Saturday, and salute to Brother Jabari and Sister Monica, his queen. They actually just got engaged. Peace to that couple. They are in the building, family. So you got to come out this Saturday to the Temple of New African Thought, located at 55527 Harford Road, to get this information, or just rewind this live stream once it's finished uploading and just go to the beginning where I show you the flyer. And I also will show the flyer at the end of the discussion, but you got to come to Baltimore to get these visual receipts. But please, Baba, go ahead and pick up with Serapis.
So yes, in 325 AD, this is where they formulated the Western version of Christianity and making of this Serapis Jesus. And the Serapis Jesus was giving a name and renamed Jesus Christ. Now, first of all, how did this start? Okay, it started with, after Alexander's death, it started with the Ptolemies. Okay, after his death, his generals took over, and they were in Egypt for 300 years. And during this particular time, they usurpers of the throne of ancient Kemet. And the Kemetic African brothers and sisters did not look at them as indigenous to the throne, which they were not. They were usurpers. They came in as invaders. So what they created was this a character named Serapis. And Serapis, the idea that they plagiarized from Asar. Okay, going back to what I said, to that spiritual story that our ancestors told, where Asar was murdered by his evil brother. And here we see that this is the Zeptepi, or the first time of creation. But the idea of salvation and resurrection, this is who Sar represented. He was known as the Lord of the perfect black. Sar is always shown as jet black. This is the black divinity that the Europeans erased by creating this Serapis Jesus. From this Serapis Jesus, during the time that we see that they were there for 300 years until now, coming up into the time of Octavian. Octavian was at war with Cleopatra and Mark Antony. Okay, prior to that, it was Julius Caesar. And after Julius Caesar's death, murdered by the Senate, then here we see that Mark Antony, will go through the story real quick. He now comes into Egypt after he was sent by Octavian. But now Cleopatra whipped some magic on Octavian, like she did with Julius Caesar. Okay. And it was Mark Antony said, I will give all the land that the Romans, okay, shed their blood for to Cleopatra after she whipped her magic on him. Okay, that made Octavian in Rome mad. Okay. And so they had this big war. Okay, it's called the War of Actium. And Cleopatra and Mark Antony lost the war. And as we know the story, that Mark Antony committed suicide. And also we see that Cleopatra equally committed suicide when she realized she couldn't whip her magic on Octavian, because Octavian was into men. So she couldn't whip that magic. But when she told Octavian, she said, you worship me. And she said, you worship me because I'm now personified as they would use the Greek name Isis. She said, I am Isis. Okay. And you worship me. Your ancestors worship me, which they did. The Romans took Isis, who the Greeks referred to her, as our ancestors call her, said, throughout their empire, to Gaul, now called France, to Germania, now called Germany. Okay. And also to Britain, which is now called Britain today. Okay. Britannia, as it was called then. This is how we have this Black Madonna in Europe, who at that time the Romans worshipped her. When Aset was telling Octavian, you worship me, she's not Isis, but she's personifying herself as Isis. Okay. And this was a problem to Octavian. When Cleopatra committed suicide, this is the time that they realized they had to make a new religion. This is a new world order that is taken over at this time. Octavian realized that, yes, they did worship her, but now they have to take from ancient Kemet spiritual stories and the making and the formulation of a new religion. Okay. When we look at the temple of Heteru, that we take our groups there, and there we see on the temple, here we see the spiritual Neter, or goddess, is Heteru. Her Zoop type is a cow. Okay. And she may have a human face with cow's ears, okay, representing the great mother. She was the surrogate mother for Heru. She was the surrogate mother for Heru. And now we see that she also represented Murray. The Kemetic word is called Murray. So when we look at the term Mary, was taken from Murray. It is a Kemetic word for love. And the making and the formulation of this Mary. Okay. It was at the conference of Ephesus in 431 AD. This is where Aset was de-Africanized, okay? In the making of this European Mary, which is a corruption from the Kemetic name, as I said, from Murray. It means love. So let's look at Heteru. Her symbol is a cow. One of the things that they've always said about ancient Kemet, that Kemet was into animal worship. You know, I mean, even though you see Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John represented as animals, a cow, an eagle, or some other kind of figure. But the question we got to ask here now, as we start to put together and see the story, Why is that cow in the manger? We see the Yule tide, that literally means the birth of the sun. You have an image of this cow. That cow is Het Heru, that was the surrogate mother for Heru. Here at this temple, Het Heru, there's the chapel where Heru was born, of the virgin birth at December the 25th that I take our groups into. All right. To show that this is the holy place. This temple, again, they were not Greek temples. The Greeks usurped the throne of ancient Kemet and got Kemetic artisans to rebuild onto already existing temples throughout the Nile Valley. In Kemet, they did this. Okay. So that temple is dated going back to the Shemsu Heru. The Shemsu Heru go back over 7,000 years BCE to show how far back these temples go. But here, again, is the story that Heru is born in this chapel. Now, in the early years, they had their Torah book. I still have the Torah book. I'm going to reveal the Torah book in the lectures. There's a lot of other things I'm going to document.
Ooh.
And the Europeans who came there who feel offended, because in the Torah book, it talks about how Heru was born on December the 25th in this holy chapel.
Baba, let me ask you a question, because I thought about so much while you were talking. You mentioned Het Heru being, represented by what is it?
A cow.
As a cow. And so I remember as a child, and my mother's watching. She, like I said, she's a pastor, so she knows the story. Do you remember when Moses went up to the mountain and God wrote the 10 commandments on a stone, and when he came back from the mountain, he was looking around at the children of Israel, and they said they were bowing down to a golden calf?
Right, the golden calf. That gold, again, when the patriarchs came in, that was the goddess symbol. That was Het Heru. When you go to the temple of Zetzeret, that means the most select and holy of places, and I'll talk about her in a second too. There you see her there, okay? So symbolically, by the Hebrews at this time, bowing down to the golden calf, which was Het Heru, that was symbolically a bowing down to the goddess. Keep in mind, the patriarchs eradicated the goddess, okay? Even in their spiritual story, the angelical realm, God is all there all by himself, okay?
There's no counterpart. There's no
right.
compliment.
It wasn't like he did this for me. In Kemet, it was a spiritual balance. The whole spirituality of ancient Kemet was based off of that. It was called Ma'at.
Come on.
They said, for there to be a God, it must be a goddess.
Come on.
For there to be a goddess, it must be a God. That's called the spiritual dialectical laws of opposites. The whole universe is ruled by spiritual dialectical laws of opposites. And they said to go against the laws of opposites, you create what? It's that. Come on. Chaos. And that's what we live in right now.
Facts,
because
Baba.
they have gone against those spiritual laws of opposites.
Absolutely. And so, Baba, Baba, Maine Armstead asked in the chat, he made a statement. He said, so in so many words, this is an astrological story of the winter solstice that takes place from December the 21st through the December the 25th. He said, is that correct?
And also during the spring solstice, the resurrection.
All right, Maine Armstead, we get it. We getting it together, brother. Go ahead, Baba. Please continue.
Right. Well, he's absolutely right, as I was talking, but this is an astrological story, okay, that is told. Even when you look at the churches, okay, and the symbols that are there. In fact, there's a European Reverend named Clymer, okay, and he talks about the fact that the symbols, okay, of the stories are still all around us, but we don't know the story behind the symbols. We know the story of when you see a cross, you think of Christianity, even though that's a corruption from ancient Kemet. That symbol was called the Amsu. It represented a spiritual resurrection. But our ancestors observed that during the time of the spring solstice, when the sun is crossing over the equator, that is the resurrection of
Come on, Baba.
Okay, that's what that is representing. It had nothing to do with the crucifixion. It had nothing to do with the human sacrifice and all these things that we see when it's referred to Easter. But again, that's another time that I eagerly talk about what that is all representing as well. But it's what our ancestors observed. Those of you who live back east, okay, and even down here in Texas, we almost froze to death down here too. But when the snow and ice is out there and it's starting to melt, okay, and the leaves are coming back to the tree, all of nature is resurrecting. All right. So here we see our ancestors observing, okay, Matnechit, which is Mother Nature, and personifying again the spirituality from their observation of nature through the cosmos, the sun crossing the equator, and equating to that with also the resurrection as well that our ancestors saw. And so again, we see one account after the other once we start looking at the temples and looking at the monuments and looking at the stories. And keep in mind that we have been locked up and away from the ancient ancestral stories for over 400 years, okay, and even longer than that in some cases. And so we have not known these stories. Many people are oblivious to some of the things that I'm talking about, but the books in stone are there. Most of the things that we've gotten through the dogma are on paper. It's written on paper of Bibles that were written in Egypt. So the next question you got to ask, why were they written in Egypt? Because the knowledge is there in Egypt. And again, that's why it's so important for us to understand what is happening right now. Because right now we're caught into helping to pick up the gross national product. Multinational corporations are very happy, okay, since they got people mesmerized, and Black Friday is coming up where people are going to trample each other down. And now you got some Black folks are putting icicles up on their house, okay. We even worship the climate of where Europeans came from, okay. And worst of all, putting an image of a caveman coming from all places, the North Pole, in front of our children. All right. So this is sad. Okay. And then you go to the malls and we see our families putting their children up on this guy called Santa Claus's lap. Okay. And so forth. In Wisconsin, they said they banned it because that's when all the pedophiles come out and play Santa Claus when they're farming. Okay. So that's a whole nother story. Again, but this Santa Claus equally came out of Rome. It's during the time of Saturnalia, where he did not bring them gifts. He ate the babies. All right, that's what he did. All right, because Saturnalia saw that. In fact, in Greece, he was called Cronus. Cronus is a very famous art in Western art. Cronus, an old white guy, where he bit the baby's head off, and the blood is flowing down the baby. So the symbols that we see are the symbols like the candy cane. Why do you have the elf attached to the candy cane and the red going down? Is symbolic as when Cronus, okay, in Greece ate his babies, and then also when you see in Saturnalia. So they kept their customs, because during this time when Constantine observed the Christmas at this time, and he's observing this holiday, and now we see that many of the Christians didn't fear celebrating this time. And some of the other people who kept a lot of the customs that were before Christianity, like worshiping Saturnalia. So these customs are still with us to this very day. People have pine trees, referred to as Christmas trees, in their house. Okay, the Germans brought that tree here.
Come on, Baba, teach.
Yes, the Germans brought that tree here. They brought that tree here, and they worshiped that tree, the Germans. Okay, when the Romans came there to Germania and tried to bring this European version of Christianity to them, they wanted to keep a lot of their customs. So some of their customs were at this time was the pine tree, okay, that represented Thor. Now, why did the Germans, the Germanic tribes, why did they use this particular tree? Because this tree stayed green year round. It's called the evergreen tree, stayed green year round. So they worshiped that tree. And so to stop, during the time when the Romans were fighting these Germanic tribes who were in the forest up there at that time, who they looked at them that they were not even good for slaves. That's how the Romans referred to them, okay, as barbarians and heathens. In fact, the term heathen, by the way, is even a German word, okay? So they bowed down and worshiped that tree. To let them keep those customs as they were bringing this European version of Christianity on them, the Byzantine Empire, they were bringing this European version of Christianity, which is a corruption of African spirituality. They let them keep those things. So the Germans, when they came here, they brought the Christmas tree or the pine tree with them. Okay, that's why you got the pine tree to this day, and why people have that tree, because the Germans brought that tree here, and it's part of their heathen custom. In fact, even in Jeremiah chapter 2 in the Bible, it even says that it's a tree that represents the heathen customs, and that you should not even have this tree.
It
But
does say that, Baba. It
right,
does say
right.
that.
Yes, it does. It definitely says that. So now keep in mind that, as I said, the Germans, they bow down and worship that tree. Now, in order for you to get your gift, what do you have to do? What do you have to do when you got to get your gift?
You
Does
saying,
anybody know?
oh, you got to be good, right? Didn't they tell you right
No,
there?
no, 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 no. What do you
What are
have
we
to
talking about?
do to get your gift from under the pine tree? What do you have to do?
What do you mean, Baba?
You
You
have
just
to
go
get
and
on
get.
your knees and bow down and get that gift.
Yeah, you got to bow down to get the
Yeah,
gift,
as you're
right?
bowing down to Thor.
Bob, I wasn't even thinking about that. You said to go under the tree to
Yeah,
actually get your gift.
people under
Right,
the
right,
tree
right,
are
right. To get
they're
your
doing
gift, you got to
things.
bow down.
Right.
You got to
My
bow
children,
down.
my children went to Marcus Garvey School in Los Angeles, and so at that time they would come to the lectures, and I would reveal Cronus and all these stories to them. And their grandmother got mad at me because she had their gifts under the pine tree. And she said, "You're not going to get your gifts." She thought they would run to the tree. They said, "No, we got to go to the closet." So why do you have to go to the closet? We have to get the broomstick. Why do you have to get a broomstick? So we can knock our gifts from under the tree, so we won't have to bow down and get the gifts. So the grandmother got very angry at me because of that. But again, we're locked into these European stories. We're locked into the European. We're deifying Europeans, and we're deifying them through these images that we were taught that these are in the angelical realm and it's real. When in fact, this is a corrupt, plagiarized version of many spiritual stories. In fact, even the word Christmas is a corruption from the ancient Medu Neter name. What Medu Neter name? Okay, when we go back to Kemet, you see on the temples, as I revealed to our group, a term called Ka. Ka representing the spirit. It's generally two arms up like this here, Ka, spirit. That's something the Romans didn't understand, okay? The Gnostics, okay, who the Romans persecuted all of them, they called it the Charis, and that formulated into the Christ. Europeans took the whole physical body literally, but our ancestors saw it was a spiritual body, okay, and that was called the Sahu, the spiritual body that would rise up, not the physical body. But on the Medu Neter, there's a term called Ka Mes. Mes meant birth. So literally the term Ka Mes, okay, spiritual birth. This is later how we see the formulation of that word Christmas came out of that Medu Neter term, Ka Mes, meaning literally spiritual birth. And that spiritual birth goes back to what our ancestors observed during this time of this cosmic event of the sun born on December the 25th, personified as Haru, who was personified as the sun itself. So once we start to, that's why Dr. Ben said, we have to go back to the temples. We have to go back to the reliefs. But worst of all, what we see that when we go back to the Pratetas or the tombs of eternity, and you see the black divinity on the tombs, you see the Sahu, the spiritual body. You see the ideas of where Raphael and Leonardo da Vinci and all the others plagiarized from these temples. What we also see are the chiseling out of the black images from the temple. This is where they start to demonize and vilify blackness. They were taking away our black divinity. And through the taking away our black divinity, this is where we could not see our own spirituality. And this is also where they were creating white idolatry. And in this white idolatry, this is where the enemy became the deity in the spiritual subconscious of our mind. And now you got some Negroes out there to say, it's not about black.
Come on.
Yes, I've heard that. Yeah, even from some people who are out here on the lecture circuit. I don't know. When people get in cahoots with some of these Europeans, it seems like we find ourselves compromising even our own black divinity. Okay, by saying it's not about black, when in fact that's exactly what it's about. It's black.
That's right.
Our ancestors, and when we see the black divinity and see that representation that our ancestors saw, even in the spiritual story that our ancestors saw, that it was the spiritual Amen. In fact, the largest temple on the planet Earth is called Amen Ipit Resut. It is now called Karnak, dedicated to Amen. And many of us end our prayers, even in Judaism, Christianity, Islam, end their prayers in some cases as Amen, especially in Christianity, Amen. And they will say that that is a Hebrew word. No, that is not a Hebrew word. I reveal on the temple to brothers and sisters and showing you see Amen everywhere. Amen is
Mm-hmm.
jet black that represented the invisible spirit, okay, that's in all of us, the invisible spirit that permeates throughout the whole universe. He's anthropomorphized in a human form for us to understand it. Shu is also in an anthropomorphic or human form, okay, it represents air. All right, you can't see air, so they put it in a human form for us to understand it. So Amen is jet black, representing what physicists are now calling dark matter. This all around us that they refer to as invisible energy. Amen is also represented as invisible energy that our ancestors saw, the invisible spirit, not the hidden spirit as they refer to it as, but the invisible spirit as they refer to it as, the meaning Amen. So as we come into this holiday, as sad as I've traveled different places in Africa during the time of December, I've traveled. It's sad to see Black folks spraying snow in their windows. It doesn't even snow in Africa except on the mountain Kilimanjaro. Okay, the mountain. Okay. Uh, it's sad to see that we are now got our people worshiping a caveman from the North Pole and the Santa Claus and all these types of things. But if we can get a spiritual representation to show how these things were copied, which I'm going to go through step by step from my research on these temples and reveal these stories and how they were corrupted. The spiritual story of a virgin birth. We talked about Haru, born of a holy birth from his mother Aset. We talked about Amenhotep III, born from his mother Matanwea. But let's also talk about a sister who was a queen who ruled ancient Kemet. And who was this? Khnumet Ma'at Garah Hatshepsut. And her temple called Zetzret Zetzru, she's born of a holy birth. As I said, this was told down through the dynasties. In order for one to take the throne, they had to be born of a holy birth. So equally, here Tahuti is a caller, comes to Queen Almas, her mother, and said, you're going to have a holy birth. Here we go to the birthing colonnade. Many times I hardly ever see people at the birthing colonnade of Hatshepsut. And here's the birthing colonnade of Hatshepsut, revealing and showing where her mother has a holy birth, and it is Khnumet Ma'at Garah Hatshepsut. And she's holding her in her lap, just like you would see the representation of the European Mary and Jesus in the lap.
Mm.
So again, the stories are told throughout because now Amen is upset because Amen wanted a pure solar child to be on the throne because some of the Nisus were marrying foreign women onto the throne. So this is where he wanted, again, Hatshepsut, he wanted a spiritual child born from Utmost. And even though her biological father is Menkaperatu Maize the first, but her spiritual father is Amen. And that story is told down through dynastic periods. So again, where did European Western religion, where did they get these ideas of a virgin birth? Okay.
Mm.
In fact, when you look at and see how the same exact story was plagiarized, it was there thousands of years before Christianity. It did not take from Christianity came and copied these stories. And many of the tour guides, it's either some don't know about it or they don't want them to talk about it because the majority of the tourists who come there are Europeans. So they don't talk about these stories. They talk about other things, maybe the dynasties, the kings and queens and so forth, but they're not talking about how the religions and ideas that were literally taken. And it's right there on the temple for you to see an eyewitness account right there on the temple.
Ashe. Hey, Baba, so there's like a couple of people are asking questions in the chat.
You have questions.
Yeah, a brother. Let me go up. I don't want to butcher his name. You know that Baltimore accent, Baba. You know we butcher names. I'm looking for him now, but he asked a question in the chat. He said, Baba, now that we know the truth, he said, how do we get over the fear that has been instilled in us? You know, a lot of us grew up in the church. I know I grew up in a Christian household, and it's if you don't believe, you're going to hell. You know, and so he's asking. I think it was Brother Kerman. I'm looking for him, but he asked the question: how do we get over the fear, you know, of going to hell? So we hear you, we know that what you're saying is true. How do we cope with the fear?
Well, first of all, we have to educate to liberate. We have to educate our people. And the fear, as you mentioned, is through purgatory, okay, where they said the devil will burn you forever and ever. If you that actually came out of the Middle Ages, actually. When during the time when they shut down Kemet, keep in mind, these are the spiritual stories. The Gnostics, who I briefly mentioned their name earlier, they were the ones who the Romans persecuted, all of them, exterminated all of them, because they were like the conduit, so to say, during the time of the Romans and during the time of the ancient spirituality. They understood the idea of the Ka, that they call caress. They understood that they were corrupting and making us Serapis Jesus. They understood this. They understood that we all are a Ka. As long as you got a human body, you got a spirit in there, you got a Ka. You got in a caress, as they refer to it as. The Romans took it and called it a Christ and slapped this image in front of us, okay, because here they could suppress, okay, those who are rising up fighting against the Roman tyranny and oppression. All right. So that would mean Malcolm X is a Christ. All right. Martin Luther King is a Christ. All right. Harriet Tubman would be a Christ. They rose up against tyranny and oppression.
Come on, Baba, teach.
Brought their spirits out, okay, to fight against that. So they slapped that up to us and then brought this dogma, okay, on you that you had to believe in this, okay, or you will go to hell. Well, during the Middle Ages, during the time of the Byzantine Romans, okay, to put this fear, anyone who talked about Kemet, they burned them at the stake. Okay. You brought up and said that these stories were taken from ancient Kemet. I think there's a woman who was teaching about the ancient spirituality of ancient Kemet and the various sciences that ended up in Western academia and so forth. And that was Hypatia, who they equally burned her at the stake. Okay. A European by the name of Giordano Bruno. That's what they literally did. They burned you at the stake. When he talked about a whole heliocentric idea that the sun was in the center of the solar system, and at the church at that time, they believed in a geocentric, meaning that the sun rotated around the earth. And anybody that went against that or said anything about ancient Kemet or ancient Kemet spirituality, in fact, if this was during the time of the Inquisitions, they would have me now getting me ready to burn at the stake. So they literally burned you at that time. So during now, how do you take and bring this same idea? You're not doing it physically, but how can you do it mentally? In some cases, mentally can be worse than the actual burning itself. Sometimes, I don't know, but they're both bad. So they put this thing of purgatory, that you'll burn in hell. And this is what the fear that the people have had during this, by creating this dogma, that you will burn in hell if you go against what they have been teaching of this white idolatry and these white images and representation. I call it white idolatry because that's what it is, the worshiping of white images. This is white supremacy Christianity.
Come on. That's what you're
right. White supremacy Christianity. If you can't see your black divinity in it, okay, that's where the enemy has made himself the deity in the spiritual subconscious of our mind.
That's right.
All right. And so again, when you look at the idea of Buddha and you look at the idea of his mother Myra, all right, and you see the Buddha as the little holy child born at December the 25th, where is that coming from? The fallopian tube. What fallopian tube? The Happy Valley. That's the now, is referred to as today. I call it the fallopian tube because the spiritual systems came up out of the Nile Valley, as our ancestors referred to as a happy. We're talking about not only in Kemet, but that 4,000, approximately 200 miles of a happy, as well as the Abai and the Atbar. These are the spiritual cultural highways that our ancestors from thousands of years, from their empirical observation of spiritual ideas, that our ancestors eventually started to put them on the books in stone in ancient Kush, and then also in Kemet, up and down the Nile, these spiritual stories. Thousands of years before the Western world was even in existence. And the number one fear today is the final emancipation. And what is that final emancipation? The emancipation of our mind. And to emancipate our mind, this is where we got to bring back our black divinity. Why are we seeing our children shooting each other down in the street? They took away our black divinity.
That's right. That's right.
It started with us as babies. You know it, a devil's food cake. That was getting instilled in the psychic of a child when you were growing up. Your mother may have made an angel food cake, so you saw what color that cake was. Okay, not to mention all the other little subtle things. Okay, even to the point where we're adult. The number one thing is to fight that black divinity. It's that black divinity that the Europeans observed, excuse me, observed on the Portettas. Okay. And that is the tombs of eternity that they painted there. That's what they observed there. All right. And that's why they did everything trying to erase it. And ideas and concepts that we see in Christianity were taken from the monuments and temples. But our ancestors wrote on the temples as though one day we would forget this story. And some of us and many of us have forgotten the story. All right. But these are not paper books. These are the books in stone. What makes paper books, okay, in the English language more sacred than these temples that our ancestors carved, okay, the oldest language on the planet called the Medu-Neter, that the Greeks refer to as the hieroglyphics. All right, older than Aramaic, older than Hebrew, older than Arabic. It's the oldest language on the planet Earth. Teach, peace on earth. The only place you're going to see the concept of peace is in Hotep carved on the temple. All right, Kemet. Black is on the temple. You got some people running around, okay, maybe never been to Kemet, maybe been there once or two, okay. But as Dr. Ben said, don't be an armchair scholar.
Come on.
There you see Kemet. Kemet is black, representing the land. Kemet Nu, that we in fact use that for our name of our tour. Kemet Nu, black people.
Black people, I say.
That's what we have to deal with. And we've got to start to circumscribe our own circumference. We've been thinking within a 2,000-year diameter. Okay, most of what we know, the best that we can come up with is generally a Hebrew story of Adam and Eve. All right. We can't think of anything beyond that. Thousands of years, as I brought up in the beginning of this whole program, before there was Adam and Eve, it was a Sar and a Set. All right. Thousands of years, even before Greek stories. All right. And this is the biggest fear of us dealing with Kemet, revealing these stories. As I said before, many people come over there and they just tiptoe through the tulips. All right. Again, but Dr. Ben, he's the one that opened up. Okay. He went for the jugular vein of white supremacy. And what is the jugular vein of white supremacy? Their religions. Because that's what has got this whole mental and psychological enslavement on black folks. Okay. And the deifying Europeans. You go into these churches and you don't see any black divinity and black representation.
No, not at all.
No, you don't see that at all. All right. So again, this is where we're still psychologically, the worst form of enslavement is spiritual enslavement.
Spiritual enslavement. Absolutely, Bob.
That's the worst form of enslavement.
But let me ask you this. There was another question by Brother Hot Spot Casino. This brother asked, when God said, let us make man, let us make them or make man in our own image. He said, could that us have been the masculine and feminine
yes, that's what I meant. Somebody messed up. Let us make man in our own image. Okay. But keep in mind, these are scribes. Mm-hmm. Okay. There's no angelical realm of a God writing these things down. Okay. And telling somebody these are people who are literally writing things down. Okay?
Right. Facts.
And making people think that this is God's word. This is the infallible word of God. Okay. And again, this is God's chosen people who are writing this. The idea of chosen people, by the way, again, see, one account after the other comes up in my mind. So even when I think about that term, chosen people, then I got to go back to the Medu-Neter. And what do I see in the Medu-Neter? Okay. Septepen Ra. Okay. Septepen Ra. Chosen by Ra. Here we see Ursa Ma'at Ra, Septepen Ra, Mesomari Amen. Hear his name. And the spirituality which is in his name. Okay. Ursa, the power. Ursa, Ma'at, truth, justice, and righteousness. Ursa, Ma'at, Ra, the sun. Okay. Septepen Ra. He's chosen by Ra. Is this where they got the concept of God's chosen children? Out of Septepen Ra? After all, Septepen Ra is thousands of years before the Hebrew religion and the language.
And so Baba, let me ask you this. The brother asks, because there's a lot of stuff going around, anti-Semitic, Judaism, Jews. He asked in the chat, he said, well, what do you define as Judaism or Jews? He said, how would you define that?
Well, the term Jews came out of, okay, there's two parts of, when you look at that land, okay, again, I generally talk about this during the time of the Passover, but briefly, it came from Judah, okay. Now, they say Judah was the black part of that land, okay, and that's in the South. And I always say we're always in the South, where the South Side, Chicago, South Philly, all right, and these different places. But again, recently coming up with, I guess I may be referring to as it's coming up with Kyrie Irving. It seems like everybody's been hit with this anti-Semitic thing. I mean, see, I think that even though I don't go along with the tenets of the things that they say in the religion, okay, because I know where many of these ideas were taken from the temples of ancient Kemet in the making of Judaism. But they may be onto some things in terms of the fact that the biggest fear that these European Jews fear is the fact that they're not Semitic. Okay. First of all, this term Semitic, okay, it's an allegorical racist myth. First of all, okay. Why do I call it an allegorical mythology or a racist myth? Because the story was created with the whole story of Noah, okay, who was drunk and naked, and Ham comes in and sees his condition of being naked, and then we get the story that God said, "Cursed be Ham's offspring." Okay, and then the three sons of Noah is Japheth is supposed to be the Europeans. Shem are supposed to be the Semitic people, okay, living in the so-called area of the Middle East, and then also Ham, okay, which is referred to as Egypt and Black folks, okay, according to the biblical story. So by the fact that these people who are Ashkenazi European Jews, these people are from the Japhites, okay? In the Bible, they're referred to as Ashkenaz, okay? That's where we get the name Ashkenazi is derived from. So by running around saying that people are anti-Semitic, okay, when in fact being Ashkenazim, okay, goes back to the biblical term Ashkenaz, which is in the northern hemisphere, which is the land of Gog, okay, because Japheth has a son named Gog, okay, and his son is Ashkenaz. Okay, now where is this land? Okay, this land is around the Black Sea. Okay, this land is around the Caucasus Mountains. All right, so that has nothing to do with any Semitic origin at all. And the fear is that I think that these Europeans have is that their identity, that they cannot use that term anti-Semitic when they're not Semitic, being Ashkenazim. All right. In the land of Magog and Gog and Togarmah and all these various names that they have in the Bible, referring to the northern hemisphere. In fact, in the Bible refers to this land of Gog and Magog and Togarmah, that this is the land of the north quarters, and that according to the biblical account, that God's going to send a fire on this land. All right. But I think that by the fact that the Black Hebrews are saying that they are, that they are not Semitic, I think this is what the biggest fear is when they start to talk about that. Now, keep in mind that let's look at an African of the 25th dynasty, and that is Taharka. Now, Taharka, now here's a Nisu, a king who comes up to save Kemet from the annihilation from the Assyrians, all right? And so here he's saving his African Hebrews. He's saving the Hebrews from annihilation. These are Cushite Hebrews. It is said that without Taharka, the Hebrew faith may not have even existed.
Wow.
So Taharka is saving the Hebrews from annihilation from the Assyrians. Now, when they talk about Jews building the pyramids, well, first of all, the only pyramid builder in the Bible is Taharka, who built his pyramid in the area in Kush, which is now called the Sudan, in Nuri. He's the only pyramid building. There's no documentation of any Jews building any pyramids, and definitely not the Great Pyramid of Akhenkhufu, because there's no Jews in Egypt at this time. So Sadat was right when he told Menachem Begin that we have no history of any Jews building any pyramids here. But at the same time, Taharka is saving African Hebrews, and he's in the Bible. And those early European writers who wrote about Taharka even called him the N-word. Okay. When they talked about Taharka, who came up and saved Kemet from the Nile. In fact, he's the last one to build the Bekinet, okay, which is what Greeks refer to as pylon, on the great temple of Amun Ipit Rasut. All right, this great temple, you can put the Westminster Abbey, you can put the Vatican City comfortably down inside this temple right here. All right, the temple dedicated to Amun that I've been talking about earlier. So, but back to the story of the Hebrew. Yeah, so I think that's the biggest fear, that these Ashkenazi European Jews, okay, that they cannot use that term Semitic if you use the biblical account of where they're really from, Europe. Okay, now how did they become Jews in the first place? Well, we have to go back to the Crusades. All right, when during the time of the Christians and the Muslims were fighting each other, the Christians coming from the west and the Muslims coming from the east, and then you have these people of Khazaria, the Khazars, okay, who did not want to become Muslims or Christians. Okay, they're trapped in the middle here. All right, they wanted their own autonomy, so they wanted to take a religion that would be independent from both of them. So they adopted this term Judaism from the Khazars. And a good book to read would be The 13th Tribe by Arthur Kessler, okay, who talks about that. They're talking about how Judaism, the European Jews, are coming from the Caucasus. All right, they're not coming from the land of Canaan. They're not coming from that portion of the world. All right, so I think this is what the biggest fear is. All right, I mean, with even Whoopi Goldberg, the only thing she said, she didn't say anything. What did she say? It was man's inhumanity to man. Okay, kicked her off the show for a while.
Did they?
Yeah, So again, I think here we see a big paranoia that if you start to pin them down to the fact that being European Ashkenazim, new European Jews, that they cannot use the term anti-Semitic because they're not Semitic people.
Ashe, Baba. So thank you so much for that, Bob. And I'm glad that you cleared up that, the Jews didn't build the pyramids, because someone actually posed that question in the chat. They said, because you have Baba speak about.
See, that's why I go to all the different areas. Okay, let's go to the Temple of a Million Years. Yes, we can document that too. And here we see that Ursama Atrasib Tepenrawa Mesumari Amen. All right. Here of the 19th dynasty. Okay, he's flooding out the Hittite forces. Okay, flooding them out. All right. There's no story that any Jews, were left Egypt. There is a story that we see that Admos, Neb-Peri-Ra Admos I, who opened up the 18th dynasty, expelled the Hyksos. It was his father in the 17th dynasty, Second Enrei-Tau, who started the War of Liberation. See, this is our African history here. We're talking about here. This has not been educated in the schools because we don't have our own schools to do it. If we had our own schools, then we'd be teaching what I'm talking about.
That's right, Baba.
Actual history here. So again, he loses his life on the battlefield, but his son Admos have finally expelled these Hyksos. That's the only expulsion of a large group of people out of Egypt. All right, had nothing to do with any Jews building the pyramids. These pyramids, like Akhet Khufu, here in the Giza Plateau. This pyramid is during the time of the 4th dynastic period. All right, we're talking about over 2,500 years BCE. There were no Jews yet during this time. All right. Now, here we see that in 1954, they dug up this boat. And this boat is Akhet Khufu's boat. This boat, I revealed to brothers and sisters when we're in the Giza Plateau, this boat is a symbolic boat. All right. It was an actual boat. In fact, it's the oldest ship, found in the world. Okay. In fact, it's bigger than Captain Cook's boat. And the boat was dismantled. They had to put this boat together. And now they're trying to figure out this boat. Okay, well, this boat was a symbolic boat. It was during the time of the flooding of the Nile, okay, that this boat would symbolically take Khufu, okay, that he got his high priest, okay, Kariheb, who to build this great monument called Mur, by the way, not pyramid, because pyramid is a Greek word, okay, for him. But to go back to the spiritual realm, to go back to the cosmos, it took place during the time of the New Ankh. What is the New Ankh? The New Ankh is the flooding of the Nile. Symbolically, it would take him from the terrestrial Nile to the celestial Nile. All right. Here they took from the New Ankh to make this story called Noah's Ark. So one account after the other, we can see where these stories were actually taken from. There's no story of a Noah's Ark where all the animals of the world. These are allegorical, mythological stories. All religions have allegory and mythologies. All right. But if you don't know the original story and where it came from, then we become gullible and take it as face value, when in fact it's an actually plagiarized story. And I think that when Dr. Ben wrote his book, Are Black Seminarians and Black Clergy Without a Black Theology?
Ooh.
Okay, powerful book, okay. The African Origin of Major Western Religions. See, Dr. Ben was a warrior scholar, uncompromising. He did not tiptoe to the tulips, all right? And many tried to suppress him, okay, like many of us out here, and some of our own black folks out here.
Oh
Okay?
yeah,
Because they
absolutely.
don't want it to be too black.
Come
All
on,
right.
absolutely.
As I heard one say on Carl Nelson's show, it ain't about black. What Negro, what's it about then?
Come on.
And then going to sacrifice our ancestors and saying that this white person, okay, he learned more from her than Dr. Ben and Dr. Francis Welsing.
Ooh.
Because you're working with some white folks now, then now you're going to compromise. See, this is what we're talking about when we get, into tied up with these folks. Okay, are they going to come and read Dr. Ben? Are they going to take Dr. Ben's word? Are they going to take Dr. Cheikh Diop's word? These European Egyptologists? No.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And Baba, my last question, this is coming from me because I feel like I asked 3 or 4 questions from the audience. So I want to ask my question, okay? And I want to close out with this. Baba, our brothers and sisters in Kemet during that period of time, did they actually take these stories literal? Or did they understand that these were astrological phenomenon?
Well, it depends on what level the people were at. The priesthood are the ones who created the stories, okay? Just like scribes who wrote the Bibles, okay? And they wrote allegorical stories and they told stories in a way for the average person to take them. I mean, that's like you telling your child asked you, as a child, Mommy, how did I come here? Were you going to go through the whole process of how they came here? You're going to talk about how you fell in love and y'all had, the sexual intercourse took place. No, you're going to make something up, okay, for them to understand it on their level. All right. So equally, the priesthood, who were the astrophysicists, the scientists, okay, they understood the spiritual stories. All right. And in many cases, the common people, they got part of the allegory. Okay, they got part of the mythology, because there's mythology in ancient Kemet in telling the stories. Okay, of the Holy Birth, the Immaculate Conception, and the various stories that they told. All right, but as you got into the higher teachings of the what our ancestors referred to as the Shishata, the Greeks referred to as the mystery system, then you got more higher spiritual teachings of what that truth is all about. It's like we broke down earlier, the cosmos, and how these Europeans just put themselves over the cosmos. Okay, we have revealed that to show that this is all about cosmology. But we got caught, they put their images in it, and we got caught in the image, even though they left the symbol of the sun behind their heads. Okay, and we can do that parallel. So when I come with the visual documentation in Baltimore for Reality Speaks, Brother Jabari, and I'm going to reveal this information and documentation. And keep in mind, this did not come overnight to me, Dr. Ma'at. This was over 42 years now. 42 years documenting from the books in stone and researching this information. All right. So it's been a journey. And so like I said before, I did not always know this. Some of us are born and we believe everything we've been told. And then some of us are born and want to know that which has not been told. Well, I fall in the latter. All right. To show with these stories, okay, I wanted to know our ancestral stories. I could not go along with the fact that, as Dr. Clark, peace be upon him, may his spirit fly on the wings of Ra for eternity, as Dr. Clark said, they colonized the afterlife. Right? So they say we in charge of this too. All right. And peace be upon another great warrior scholar. All right. Uncompromising. Okay. I've been on the front line with him. That's Brother Khalid Abdul Muhammad. He said we must have been in the kitchen cooking the meal because we're not at the table.
Come on.
So, see, these were the uncompromising warriors, okay? They didn't tiptoe through the tulips, all right? Dr. Ben, okay, Dr. Clark, Khalid Abdul Muhammad, and also Reverend Dr. Shaka Musa Bashango.
Come on,
African people
Baba.
and European holidays
Come on,
mental
Baba.
genocide. Got to get it. I mean, this is a time of the year that these books have got to be picked up, all right? So we don't get caught and get mesmerized and caught up into these things and bowing down to Thor, as represented as the pine tree.
Come on.
And all these things and save our money so we don't get caught up in the multinationals pushing this stuff on us and going on and on and on. And Dr. Ma'at.
Come on. So, Baba, I just want to tell the folks, encourage the folks, come on down to Baltimore, family. This Saturday, November the 12th, we're going to be at the Temple of New African Thought Holistic Wellness Center, located at 55527 Harford Road, Baltimore, Maryland, 21214. Let me drop the link. I've been dropping it in the chat all night. Moderators, grab this link and flood the chat with the link. Hold on. Let me go here, family.
And I'm coming for people to think.
Come
you got
on.
a cerebral brain. Okay, let's use it. Not to believe in what I'm going to say or show. Okay, even though I'm going to back it up through the documentation of my research on the books in stone. And we're going to do a comparative analysis, Dr. Mahad.
Come
on. That comparative analysis, then you can see how these things were literally plagiarized. I'm not coming with lip service here. I'm coming with field research like a court of law.
That's right.
So let's put it in the middle court of law.
Let's put it in the court of law. And like you said, Baba, compare it side by side. This is what you have. And this is what my research, this is what I've concluded via my research. This is what my research shows. Family, I just dropped the link in the chat. Moderators, grab the link, flood the chat with the link. Family, get your tickets ASAP, because tonight we had a conversation. I had a dialogue with our master teacher, Baba Ashwall Kwesi. But on Saturday, you're going to see a visual presentation of everything that he described. And I know some people said, well, will it be live stream? Will it be live stream? No, it won't be live stream. I just text while Baba Ashwall Kwesi was talking. I text Brother Jabari.
But
I said, Brother Jabari,
they can go
get the DVD.
Get the DVD.
Get the DVD. And that's what Brother Jabari said. He's like, look, he was like, nope, it's not going to be live stream. You know, if they want it, they come over here. They go over to KemetNew.com, grab the lectures. So either you can show up at the lecture on Saturday for the visual presentation, or head on over to KemetNew.com to grab his lectures. KemetNew.com. Moderators, flood the chat with the link, family. Get your tickets ASAP. Baba, I want to drop this bomb for you. Fire! 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 Thank you so much, Baba, for all of your time, energy, and wisdom. Baba, do you have any closing words for the listening audience?
Yes, well, again, like I said before, this is, as Bobby Wright called it, this is an African community. We're coming out. Okay, it's now time for the salvation of our African souls now. And as our ancestors, many of the colossal statues that you see over in Kemet, you see them walking with the left leg forward. All right. In fact, we dealt with a lot with the community down in Atlanta that we had dealing with the masonry. We were dealing with masonry down there when I was on your show last time. And I talked about how we have the left leg forward. Why the left leg forward? All right. Symbolically, to trample down evil. We got to trample down white supremacy. Bring forth our Black divinity for our hearts to go forward to know thyself.
Come on. And that's what it's about, Baba, to know thyself. And the only way, Baba, and
that didn't start with Socrates either.
Oh, yeah. No. It didn't start with Socrates. Absolutely not. You know, and so the only way to know that, Baba, is if we receive African-centered education. And so after you and I go off, I got to bring in Baba Amin. He's a powerful warrior, Baba. Him and his queen, they started an African-centered institution called
I listened to him last time we were on for a while. I picked it back up on your YouTube, and yes, powerful warrior, uncompromising spirit,
uncompromising warrior.
Right. These are the kind of warriors we need on the front line. We don't need anybody, as Dr. Francis Welsing said, running on the other side of the white chessboard and then start shooting darts back at us.
Come on, we don't need that. And so, like you said, he's an uncompromising warrior. I have him backstage in the building, because I want to give people an option, right? Like we talk about issues but what's the option here? Or what's the solution here? The solution is African-centered education. And so in order for us to learn, he said, know thyself. So learn about ourselves, know thyself. Then we have to educate our babies, right? And so we got to get our babies in African-centered institutions. And so right after we close, family, don't leave. I know I'm going to play my outro. Don't leave, because you know how folks, Baba, they hang up. Soon as Baba get off, they boop, they hit the button, Baba, and they're out of there. Give me 5 minutes of your time. Not even 5 minutes, because he gives his spill so fast, Baba. It only take a couple of minutes. Give me about 2 to 3 minutes, family, of your time. After our master teacher gives his closing words, I'm going to bring on Baba Amin to talk about the Uhuru Academy, because it's essential to provide our children with an African-centered education. So Baba, please close us out with your words, Baba. What are your closing words?
Again, we should call the bringing back speaking of the children and speaking of the African-centered school our brother has, and definitely give him a big applaud for that. My children went to Marcus Garvey School in Los Angeles, started by Dr. Onion Palmer, peace be upon him. And again, considering that we're in this time and trying to pull together our Black divinity, let's start calling our own Black children. Call our little brothers the Son of God. Right. Call them Sarahs. These are our little Sarahs.
Come on.
That's what's going to tell our daughters that you are our Sit Ra, or the daughter of God.
Ashe.
That's that and pulling together that Black divinity to empower them within themselves.
Ashe.
And it's that spirituality that will start to pull back our spiritual Black divinity. And that's what we have. That's the biggest fear that white supremacy have, that we will stop worshiping their image. That's the biggest fear.
Well,
So
Baba,
it's about our Black divinity.
Ashe. Baba, again, I thank you for your time, your wisdom, and your energy. I know you're going to bring that fire, that heat when you come to Baltimore. Brother Jabari had texted me when you were talking, and he said this. I want to read this to you live on air. I want to give you your flowers. He said, I sent him a screenshot of us, and he said, I see. He said, I'm here. He said, this is one of my favorite teachers. Set me on fire. Set me on fire.
Well, I can't help myself, Dr. Ma'at. I'm a fire sign. I'm Sekhmet. That's the Kemetic word for Sekhmet. And by the way, you're Ma'at. That's Aquarius, Ma'at.
I didn't, Baba. I didn't know that. That name
Aquarius,
came.
that's the Kemetic. The Greeks. The terms that we use are Greeks. So the Kemetic is yours would be Ma'at. I'm Sekhmet. I'm fire sign. I can't help myself.
Wow. And Baba, I never made that connection. It was just meditating on a name, and Dr. Oya Edwa Ma'at. It came together. And
Aquarius,
so anyway,
Aquarius is Ma'at in the Kemetic zodiac.
Ashe. And so anyway, Baba, we look forward to, like I said, receiving you on Saturday and just listening to your wisdom. And I love how you said, you know what, just use your brain when you come. I'm going to put in my research. I'm going to show you what you have. I'm going to put in my research, and we're going to do comparative analysis.
There it is.
Use your brain and you decide for yourself. You're saying, look, I'm not here to proselytize when I'm just here to present my findings from my findings of the research that I've conducted over a period. You said 40 years, right, Baba? 40 years? 42 years. So you said, I'm not proselytizing. I want you to decide for yourself. And so with that said, Baba, I thank you.
I'd like to leave it with one more thing.
Please do, Baba.
Let's speak a little bit of the Kemetic language. I would like to say Teta, Kemet, Neta, Ankh, Senejeb.
You got to translate that for me, Baba.
Translate that. Teta, Kemet, Neta, Ankh, Senejeb. Everlasting Black, divine life, health, strength. That's what we have to have.
Oh, Baba, I'm gonna take the clip.
Everlasting Black, divine life, health, and stability and strength.
So I'm gonna take the clip, Baba, and rewind it back and listen to you say it over and over again, so I get it and I'm not butchering it.
Neta, Ankh, Senejeb.
Ashe.
So you got to put Black in there.
Ashe. So Baba, again, thank you so much for coming through and just absolutely for giving us your time, your energy, and your wisdom. So I'm gonna bring Baba Amin in and let him talk about the Uhuru Academy for a few moments, and then I'll let the crowd go. So family, please don't go nowhere. I'll be right back in 30 seconds. Ashe.
Let's combat and fight back with Meltrax. The war of the minds, they want control of the masses. And Common Core, they dumb us down in the classes. Without knowledge, we can't gain access. Build with the elders, take notes and write classics. We keep whining on the block, how it's gonna stop? Let's start supporting our own, make their supply drop. We buy stocks, then we buy blocks. Cause we know the truth and we tuned in to Dr. Maya.